So most time we have a computer directly connected to a printer. That's my symbol for a printer. And this could be a USB connection, it could be through the network, it could be Wi-Fi, it could be Bluetooth or whatever, but some way of directly connecting to it, which is fine. There's a lot of advantages to that. It's easy, quick setup, you know, whatever you want to do. From your local computer, then you can share it. You can create a share, just like you do a file share, and then other PCs can use your computer to connect to it. But most of the time, if it's on the wireless network or even a wired network, they're all going to go directly to it in itself. The downside of this is security and access and all that kind of stuff. So in a home environment, it's fine, or in a small business, it's okay, let anybody print anything. But in businesses, we try to regulate or control access to resources, and printers are definitely resources, especially if you have higher end ones, like printing out, I don't know, packet tracers on a color printer. You know, you might want to regulate some of that so you don't have people doing black pages and pages of black and white printing on a, you know, a little bit more expensive color printer. So as long as you have standalone computers like Gordy's room and a standalone printer like this one, you can't control that. In a classroom, in other network environments where you're part of a domain like these computers are, it is a little bit more controlled. You really can't print to that unless you're given access to that, you know, directly through the server. And so that's where we take the printer. Actually, I should draw that. I'm gonna have to redraw my printer. And we separate the printer with our server in between. And I'll just draw, I guess, the server. So the PC is going to connect to the server, and then the server grants the access to the printer. This is why we also call this a print server, because it's providing the print services to the different people that are connecting to it. So you get multiple devices, obviously through the server, and then the server will grant access to the printer itself. What this does is gives us all the control of who can access which device. You know, obviously the server can go to multiple printers. But I'll show you other ways of regulating as well about who can access what at different times with different shares. We're going to keep it pretty simple just to begin with, and we're going to set up the print services and just basically configure the simple connection right through here. A PC going through the server to the printer. So, taking a look at my servers. So I'm just going to watch to begin with, and then we'll come back and give you a chance to implement this as well. I'm going to provide this service on my Data One server. If you ever heard of file and print servers, a lot of times the file services and print services are put together on similar servers. They can be a separate server. You could put it on your domain controller. I try to keep as much off my domain controllers as possible, though. I like to keep them pretty clean, just domain controllers, and then DNS, because DNS and DHCP work really closely with domain controllers. But other services like printing and file services and web services, I try to put on other devices. So I'm going to try to keep it off of domain DC1 and DC2. I'm going to put it on Data One. When I go ahead and log in, I have to log in as administrator, and actually I have to log in as GOPA administrator. Otherwise it's going to want to try to log in locally. Make sure I'm on Data One. Good. I'll click on Add Roles and Features after it's finishing coming up. It's a role-based server. It is just in my Data One server. You can remotely install this using your remote tools that you did before. And the service that we want to do is print and document services. As soon as I click that, it's going to want to add the administrative tools, which of course you would want to do. So it's print and document services. That's a role. It's going to automatically add the tools to manage those as well. And then I go ahead and click next. And I don't want to add any additional features. And I click next again and then next. Now, this is kind of an important screen, just showing you some of the other features. We're going to keep it super simple in this class, Server Admin 1. And we're going to be working with just a print server. On the right-hand side, a print server includes the print management snap-in, used for managing multiple printers and print servers. We also have distributed scan servers available to us. We're not going to go into this, but I just want to at least introduce this to you. Well, you can have scanners that are on the network, and just like you can scan something in locally, you can manage that across the network. You can actually have it go to different people's inboxes or to different folders or whatever. So you can manage scanners as well. So instead of outputting, you can also input. You can also do internet printing. Internet printing uses the IPP protocol, which is the Internet Printing Protocol, and allows you to print over the internet. So the printing that we're doing here is going to be based on local area networks and wide area networks, but you have to be part of the network. IPP doesn't require you to be on the network. And I used this for years, and I've absolutely loved IPP printing, and I'm probably going to put it back into our network here in the classroom. But basically, you can take a laptop or any device and be anywhere in the world on the internet and have access to your local printers within here. So I could print to those printers back there, or even my color cube, because I have access to that, from any device on any computer anywhere, as long as you're on the internet. So it's kind of cool of how that functions. There is still security involved in that, so not anybody can print anywhere from there. So you'd have to log in and have this, the access to do it. We also have LPD services available to us. This is the Linux and Unix world. So if you have Linux devices or Unix devices out there that require LPD, Windows Server provides that to them, and it's just a way of printing. So we're not going to worry about that, but we're going to concentrate exclusively on print servers. I'm going to click the box to restart my server if it needs to automatically. I don't think it does, but I just never know. And I go through the install. The install is overall pretty quick. It's not a huge role that's being included. It's not nearly as big as like doing Active Directory or even DHCP or DNS. Those are pretty large roles. Printing in itself is pretty small. Installation succeeded, so I am done. So I click close. And there's no additional setup or things you have to do like an Active Directory. It's like, oh, now you have to do an extra step or, you know, whatever. You have to finish the installation. That is pretty much it. If I go under Tools now, I now have a print management tool that I did not have before. So this is your management tool. And it actually allows you to manage all your print servers across all of your network. So this Data 1 server now becomes a print server, and we can see that underneath our print server list. If I made DC1 and DC2 print servers as well, they would show up under here, so you can manage which printers are connected to which servers and how it's all managed under one console, which is kind of nice. It centralizes everything. Yes? Yes, I can. Okay, so now everybody should see my screen. So under Data 1, I have drivers, forms, ports, and printers. Now, one thing about the terminology used in all of Windows, and this goes to the client side as well. When we talk about printers, we're not talking about that white box in the back that has ink and paper. That is a printing device. That's not a printer. And if it's on an exam, you would get it wrong on a Microsoft exam. A printer is the share or the software or the configuration pointing to the physical device. So that's a printing device, but a printer is going to be the software that allows you to access the device. So the printer exists on the server, the hardware device is over there. By default, you get two printers, which again is the software driver side of things, built into Windows. And this comes on your client as well. So if you have nothing plugged in, you're going to see these two printers here. And one's a PDF writer and the other one's an XPS writer. Basically what these do is if you have a document in Word or Excel or a web page or something, you do a file print and you say Microsoft Print to PDF, it's not going to come out any physical device. It's going to be written to a PDF file. What's the advantage of that? What is a PDF file? So with a PDF, anybody can open it and read it, essentially. You have to have a free reader, but even the readers are built into more and more things. It's built into Edge. I think it's built into Chrome. I don't know if the File Explorer supports it, by default or not. But you can have a free Adobe Reader. It's on any kind of device. So it's portable. It's a free, it's available to everybody. So it's something, most of the time, I'll take documents and throw them in a PDF format if I'm going to send them to somebody. One thing about them, it keeps them kind of secure. Now I know that they've created PDF writers that you can go and edit things, but in general, it's a read-only file. Like, here's the format. You can have a very complex document that prints all kinds of things, like maybe an AutoCAD. If I print it to a PDF, you don't have to have AutoCAD to open it, or some kind of like Illustrator, which is a high-end graphics program or something like that. PDF is a very, very generic, and that's all it's doing. So I can take my spreadsheet, my Word document or whatever, and put it to a PDF, send it out to anybody. You really can't easily change the contents of it. You can read it without having that program or whatever. So hopefully you're familiar. Hopefully more of you are familiar with PDF than you're admitting to, but that's what that is. Microsoft XPS Document Writer is Microsoft's version of PDF. XPS is a portable format that's free with free viewers and readers and that kind of stuff, except it's XPS, therefore it must be better. I don't know, but that's what they say. Has anybody used an XPS document before? You have? Okay. On purpose, or that was just given to you, or? That was the only option. Yeah. Yeah, Microsoft's basically saying we're the same and better than PDF. I'm not seeing that. When I download files from the internet, they're typically PDF files. I have yet to see an XPS. In fact, I don't think I've ever received an XPS document. But anyways, this is Microsoft's same thing. I write it to the standard format document. You just have a very basic reader, which probably comes included with Windows, and it's there for you. So those are your printers that are there built in. We obviously want to add a printer, but again, this is the software. We're not adding the physical device. We're going to add it, and this is just like you would add a printer in your local computer. So we're going to add, in this case, we're going to be adding a TCP/IP printer on here, and we're going to type in the IP address. Robert, can you tell me the IP address of that top printer? And I should know these, and they just all went blank. 172.160.20. Okay, and the bottom was .21 then? Okay, so we're just going to play with 1 right now. So 172.16.160.20. And when we do that, it should go out and says, hey, that's an HP 4100 series printer, which is great. Now, for the naming of the printers, this is kind of important of how you name it, because if this is how it shows up on the network, people would have no idea what this is, especially if you have 2 or 3 or 10 of these different devices. So how I name my printers typically is I do the location. So this is L119. And then I tell the type of printer it is. So it's an HP 4100. Now I know that I have 2 of them in this classroom. So I'm going to sort of do a little jump start and identify this as printer 1. So L119 HP 4100-1 is the actual printer name. Now, because this is on a server, it's assuming you're going to share this. That's kind of the point, is that you're going to create a local printer but you want to share it to all of your clients, to all the people that be connecting to you. So I'm going to name the share the exact same thing. So I copied the printer name, and I'm going to paste the share name onto here, and I click next. And I can go ahead and do a test page. Normally I would do this, but with 15 of you in here all doing a test page, they're all going to come out saying that they were printed from a server called Data One. So I have no idea which one's mine and which one's yours and whose is anybody else's. So we're going to skip that at this point and be able to just see the printer on the list. Okay, so we have one printer on here. I can right click on here and look at properties, and we can take a look at this just to show you a little bit about the properties. And this would be very similar to a local install. There's a couple different things, but in general it's the same. So you have preferences. This is for the printer itself, whether it's portrait or landscape, paper quality, if you have different settings. You can print a test page from here, but again, don't, because all it's going to do is say that a test page was successfully printed from Data One, and all of our PCs are Data One, so you're not going to tell the difference. Here's your sharing. The share name you can come back and change if you want. The one thing I would suggest that you would change, though, is this checkbox. By default, it's turned off. It says list in the directory. What this does, all that this does, is just make it easier for users to find it if they were going to add a printer. If you don't have it, they can still find it, but listing in the directory, it just comes up so much faster. So if you go to Properties of the Printer and go to the Sharing tab, click on List in the Directory. So I would encourage you to be doing that. Ports are just how it's connected, and we're going to come back to this later on when we work with other settings on here. Advanced. This tells you when it's available, and we're going to talk about this later on, what driver you're going to use, print spooling. You can have separator pages on things in here as well. So if you have multiple people printing, you can have a separator page. I've been having problems getting that to work in our classroom one, so I have to keep working on that. If you have a color printer, color management. Here's security. Who is allowed to have access to what? And we're going to come back to this. Just realize that this is one of the properties pages. And then we have the device. Now this is the device we're trying to configure. So if you have, a normal way of where it's going to, get paper from which tray or which bin, or if it's duplexing or whatever, that's where you can set those things. So the only thing we changed was under sharing is we put list in the directory. So after we set that up, I'm going to switch over to my Windows 10 computer. And I'm going to log in as, I'll log in as Daniel. Or Jessica. I don't know. That's your go-to person, Jessica, yeah. So I know I've logged into Daniel before, so I have a profile for him, so it didn't take a long time to log into him. And now here's Daniel. Daniel's part of everyone, so Daniel can print to this printer, but the printer's not set up. So if I want to go to, you can go to it through Control Panel or through Settings, but you can get to your devices, which would be your printers. So I went to Settings, and I normally go through Control Panel. I'm trying this different today. But under Devices, under Settings, I can go to Printers. And I can add a printer or a scanner. So this is the client side. Add a printer or a scanner. And because it said list in the directory, if you notice, this popped up almost instantly. It was just right there. Okay, that's the printer I want to install. L119 HP 4100-1 on Data One. So that's the printer that I want. I go ahead and click Enter on there, and I click Add Device. And because it was in the directory, the person was able to actually download and install this. A normal user can't install printers. So if they were searching as through the network or typing by the IP address, it would most likely prompt them for a UAC as administrator access to be able to install a device. But you list in the directory, they have access to it, and now it should be installing that device. So just flipping, and now it's ready to print. Now don't print a test page either, because it's going to say that's successfully printed from Win10-1, which is my computer name and your computer name. So I'm just doing a quick review here. So I set up the printer on here, and I could do a test print to making sure that sequence is working. But again, just because of naming, it's just kind of weird in here where I forego that. Then, from the PC, I configured access to the printer share. And now we're going to test the entire throughput to see if I can print from here out to that printer directly. So we're going to do that by flipping over to, staying on Windows 10. And I'm going to use Notepad. And I'm going to put my name in Notepad because that's going to tell whose page this is going to be. So don't type in Paul Benfield. That wouldn't make any sense. And I'm going to do a print. And you're going to see that it's already my default printer, the L119 HP 4100 on data 1. And I'm going to go ahead and print the document. And the printer is slow, but it sounds like something's printing. Robert, could you just check that for me and see if that's my name or if somebody beat me to the activity? Well, if somebody didn't beat me, they were right behind me at least.
Oh, Tim.
Tim's so quick. So here's another example of a PC going to a server and then having a share. In fact, I should draw this. Having a share going to a printer. Now that share, as you saw, I can control who can print through that security tab, and by default, everyone can print. They can't manage the printer, but they can print. That's the default. And also when I can print using that share. Now that gives us a lot of flexibility though. So if I have one that's just called share 1, just for lack of creativity, and then I have another one going to the exact same printer that's called share 2, I can have two shares point to the same location, but I can control the share properties of there. And these are some examples that they usually give in different classes or different training materials, is say that the salespeople need to get their sales reports out or contact stuff right away first in the morning, and they can't get distracted with you printing out an invoice or something, because sales is where it all comes down to. So I would give the sales group access anytime. So when would be always. So if I just take a quick flip over to, now you don't have to do this, but if I do a quick flip over to my data 1, and I look at this share, I can go to properties and I can go to security and I see everyone on there. Well, I can add groups on here. So let me just do the sales users. Sales users can print, and I get rid of everyone. If I look under, let's see, advanced, they can always print. So sales users can print always by having this specific share. So if you're a salesperson, you could just print, but if you're not a salesperson, you can't print at this point. That's where the second share would come in. And the second share then would allow everyone to print, but the when would be restricted to say, oh, I don't know, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. or whatever you want to say, or they can print in the afternoon, or they can print after 9 a.m. because that gives, you know, the salespeople 2 hours to print and get their stuff done before you can do it. So people can still print to there. It's just not going to come out until after 10 o'clock. So the printer's not going to be tied up for there. So let me just show that to you quickly as well. Yes, Jonathan. So what happened is that you could print to it, but it'd just say waiting, waiting, waiting. And at 10 o'clock, all of a sudden it'd say print to the printer. So it's just a scenario saying that we want the salespeople to print all the time, but all the other users, we want to free up that printer for the salespeople because, you know, it's their special time, 8 until 10, that they can print uninterrupted because all their sales reports or something. If you're in manufacturing, it might be reverse. I want my production team to have that printer and no one else can print to that until after the production stuff is done. Or inventory, or, you know, invoicing. You know, it depends. Whatever you put as priority, that's what you would end up giving them first crack at this. In reality, what would you do? Buy another printer. Absolutely. You know, but again, this is just showing you the capabilities of it. So if I had another printer share on here, I'd add a printer. Again, I'm adding the printer, not a device, the software in here, and then I'd set it up exactly the same way, point to the same printer, but everyone would have access to it. What I would do then is just change the properties for under the advanced and say it's available only after 10 a.m. So that's showing those capabilities. This will not get queued to your local print spooler. This is why it's done. Another reason this is done on the server is that I can quickly print a document, and as soon as it hits the server, I can turn off my computer. And the server's running all day long, at least hopefully it's running all day long. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whenever that job is ready or available, there could be literally 1,000 jobs. You know, my company's really cheap. I have one printer for 10,000 employees. So, you know, whatever. And so you might have to wait 2 days before your job comes out or something. But your computer doesn't have to be on. As soon as it's sent, the print server on the server takes over, and it actually holds all those jobs. And again, in reality, you'd buy another printer. You know, I don't see a lot of these things needing to be done, but it's the capability of it. So needing to know, or you have to be aware that those are the capabilities of having different shares for there. Okay, another capability is being able to do printer pooling. So here's a PC, and it goes to my server, and then it goes to a printer. And I have this share called, you know, HP 4100. Well, that's not what it's called at all, but I'll just pretend. But that printer's busy. Say I only have one, and I have all these people printing to it, and they're always waiting for it. I could add another printer and have people access it through this share. The problem is, though, is that the person would have to know that the first one's busy and then choose the second printer, and telling users to choose different printers at different times of day, not a good idea. Don't even tell them even options. So what we do is we're able to do printer pooling. We have one share that goes to two printers. And that's what we're going to set up next. And the idea behind that is if one is busy, or if one's out of paper, or one's offline, or whatever reason, they have a second one that's also available to there. And we have the same thing set up in the classroom. Purely for this example, the times that we have multiple people printing, pretty low. But it has the capability of being able to go back and forth between the two printers by using printer pooling. This is done a little bit differently. We're not creating a second share like we did back here when we gave them two different levels of permissions going to the same printer. We actually have the one share, and we just configure where it's going to go to. So to flip to that, we want to flip over to, we'll close that. Flip over to my data one, and I take a look at the printer that's existing. I go to properties, And this is where I go to ports. So looking at my diagram, I have one share that's going to 2 different locations. And that's where these ports come in. The first thing I want to do is enable printer pooling. And that's a little checkbox way in the bottom. So I enable printer pooling. What that allows me to do, that allows me to choose multiple checkboxes on top. Now I'm not going to actually use any of these because I don't have it clicked to my COM port, but that shows you that I can do that. If I did not have enable printer pooling enabled, as soon as you click another port, that's where it's going to go to. So you can't go to multiple locations unless you have printer pooling enabled. So, and I click back under my port, which is my, scroll over here, 172.16.160.20. I'm going to enable printer pooling, and I'm going to add another port, which is your other device. It's going to be a standard, it's not going to be a local port. If it was a USB, obviously you could do that, but this is a TCP/IP port. I'm clicking new port on here, clicking next, and now my IP address, 172.16.160.21. That's the second printer in the back of the room. (172.16.160.21). Adding a new port, and I click next. It finds the printer, and I'm done. You can see that both of these ports are checked, which means that printer pooling, when the job comes to that printer, software, driver, share, whatever, it's going to go to 2 potential locations. It doesn't duplicate them. It doesn't, it's not a splitter. It's not going to print at both of them. It's going to choose, look at the availability of them individually and say, I'm going to print to this one or print to that one. As soon as you do that, you click close, and that's it. So you have no control over it, by the way. It also makes a lot of sense by having them physically next to each other. It would not make any sense to having one on the 3rd floor and one on the 5th floor and not telling people where it's going to go. You would literally need them next to each other. If you notice, I could have added multiple ones, additional ones. I could have another printer back there in the corner, and I have it .22 and .23 and .24, and you'd have a whole row of printers that you would print to the one printer object within your client, and it's going to just come out on one of those. You still have to look. That's where separator pages come in handy. That prints out your name and the job name or whatever on top of it. We're not going to get to that in class because there's some tricky things with that. But at least, you know it's going to come out somewhere. So flipping back over to my Windows client, let me log back in. I'm going to name it Paul Benfield Test 2 and do a file print. And I lost my printer. Oh, here it is. No, it's still there. Good. Whew. Didn't I say print? What? Okay, hang on a second here. Pay attention. Print. And... oh, on access denied. I took my rights away. I'm not in the sales department. I forgot to change that back. So security. I want to add everyone back into here. Give everyone print rights. Get rid of the sales users. Click OK. Now let's go back over here. Cancel that. That's a good example. Oh, do I have to wait for this? Always available, and everyone can print. Probably have to like log out or something. Oh no, it's ready now. So when I go to print, it's going to come out on one of these 2 printers back there. I don't know which one, but it is successful. So that's the idea of working with shares and giving different groups different rights or different times to print. It's also dealing with printer pooling. There's one more thing I want to show, and then we'll be done. And that has to do with actually adding the printer. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to remove this printer. So under printers and scanners, under L119 HB4100, I'm going to click remove the device. So say this is a clean computer. You know, Daniel figured out how to add a printer. He went under settings, went under devices, went to printers, add a device, clicked on HP, you know, L119. How many of your users are going to do that or want to do that? They're not. They're not going to want to do that. So we want to automate this. How do we do that? How do we install things? Group policies. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to use group policies to have this done for us. So I'm actually going to leave this sitting here with no printers and then hopefully have it automatically added. We'll see if that works. So I'm going to go back over to data 1. And I could go back through group policies. So I could go to tools and I could go to group policies. Oh, I can't do it on here because that's on DC1. Switch over to DC1. I could go through the group policies and find the whole thing or whatever. The printer management actually automated some of this for us by making it really easy. If I right click on my printer within my print management, it tells me right here I can deploy this from a group policy. So it's going to write my group policy. It's going to update my group policy for me automatically. So I don't have to go into group policy editor, find the right thing, and go all the right settings or whatever. Is I can deploy it right. I can actually make the changes into here. So when I right click on there to deploy with the group policy, the first thing you have to do is choose which group policy you want to actually update and modify to do this, to actually apply this. So I'm going to click browse and oh no, what's wrong? Why isn't it finding my group policies? What am I doing wrong? Hang on. Don't know up the first time. Okay. So I browsed my group policy and now it did it again. Cancel, browse. Well, now it just worked a second ago. Okay, what's the secret? I have to click inside and then click browse? I don't remember to do that. Must be a 2016 thing. And I'm just going to put it in my default domain policy. I know that applies to my whole domain, and I just want everybody in my domain to get this printer. If you had a specific policy for different departments, say that this was a departmental printer, for sales or HR or whatever, you might apply just to group policy. By the way, the policy has to exist. You can't create the policy from here, so you're applying it to an existing group policy. So I can use the default domain policy, and then I click OK. And I like applying it to the user portion and the computer portion, just to make sure it all gets there. And then you do have to click add. The biggest thing that people miss is clicking the add button. When you click add, it ends up showing down here. So it's saying, I'm going to add this printer to all the users in the domain, and I'm going to add this printer to all the machines in the domain. So that kind of just covers all of our bases. There's more intricate things that you could apply to, like we do in the classroom. I just have it set to computers, that all these computers in L119 are going to get that printer. And then eventually if Gordy ever gets in the domain, then his printer will go to those computers, not based on user accounts, but based on computer accounts. But I'm just going to do both just to make sure it all applies. So then I click OK, and now it has successfully updated my group policy. So I'm done with this. So hang on. Okay, so Okay, so I'm done with this. So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to switch over to my Windows 10. And I'm going to run my GP update /force. Let's see what happens. And if you notice, the printer is automatically getting installed. So if you're watching, under the printers and scanners, it just suddenly installed that printer because of the group policy update. To see if that's the case, I'm going to log in as somebody else who I did not set the printer up for. So I'm going to sign out, and I'll log in as, oh, I don't know. Sign out anyway. And I'll log in as another user. We'll do Hannah. Probably haven't logged in as Hannah before, so it might take a bit. This is the first time Hannah's logged in, or at least with printers. Let me click on her devices, and there's the printer automatically configured. So what's nice about this also is, say that whole printing system goes down and I need to roll out a different one, or I upgrade to a, I don't know, a color printer. I can roll this out to the users without them doing anything. All they have to do is log out, log back in, or the next day or whatever, and then suddenly they'll get the printers available to them right in their list. So again, that's what you're going to end up be doing, is you're going to end up creating a printer. I'll probably having you do printer pooling and then having it automatically rolled out using your group policy. Ultimately, for the final exam as well, you'll be going to your Windows client computer and printing a test document, and it's got to print out of one of those two printers. That's kind of the goal. So, okay, any questions?